what I'll be doing is, yeah, as Lydia said, is sort of essentially a short mock TA screen. Some of the questions I ask will be ones that I do. There might be a few in there that I don't ask, but other people do, and you might sort of encounter in a more in a different, let's say, screen. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, we're not naming the company, so I'm just going to keep saying at the company, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, I don't work for the company that the job is for, so I can't speak too deeply
Mm-hmm.
about that.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Um, just a quick question again, before we go into the intro. What is the difference between talent acquisition recruiters interview and, for example, a hiring manager's
Yeah.
interview?
So the TA screening is really it's not meant to test whether you can do the job. It's not meant to test your sort of expertise in it. What we're looking for is at a high level, does it seem that your experience overlaps with the role? And then a bunch of admin stuff. Does the salary like is the salary request in line? What's your notice period? All that sort of stuff. And so we will, through a TA screen, what we're looking at is kind of how you're able to answer questions. And again, at a high level, seem to be a fit for the team, for the company, all that sort of stuff. But we're not saying, can you do the job? That's what the hiring manager and sort of future screenings are for. Because what the hiring manager will do is like they know the role. They're the expert. And so, for example, if it's a developer role, like I'm not a developer, but I know enough about it to be able to say, hey, like kind of you've done these things. That does seem to that like that kind of experience is what we're looking for. The hiring manager will then say, okay, can you actually do it in the way that we want it to be done?
Thank you. And for people who do not know you, could you
Yeah,
kindly give us a short intro?
sure. Yeah, so I'm Leo. I've been recruiting in Finland and other countries around the world for about like 10 years now. I've been recruiting for a lot of different roles, everything from sort of quite deep sort of biotech roles to SaaS, gaming. I currently work in defense at the moment. I've worked both in-house, so being employed by a company to recruit for them, and as a consultant. So many companies have come to me to find candidates for them. But yeah, so I've been doing this for 10 years, essentially pure recruitment for a lot of different types of roles.
Thank you for explaining that. I would kindly ask everyone to take a camera off because very soon we will go into the session. And we have a volunteer today. Mamata, is it the right way to pronounce your name?
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you like to give us a few words about you? Who are you professionally?
I am a food scientist by profession. I've spent now about 6 years in academic research and 3 years in industry. I am a food technologist, master's degree in food technology, and I have a PhD and postdoc in food material science. My work mostly is very much focused on food biopolymers, ingredient research, and how new applications can be developed, new products can be developed from those biopolymers. Currently, I'm working as application development lead at Origin Bauschen. It's a startup based in Otaniemi. The work of the startup is to develop new fine chemicals from unutilized algae, so waste algae, especially from Caribbean islands. I work as a application lead, where my job is to develop application prototypes, bridge the process development and the market needs. I'm applying for this job at Valio. The job is research scientist position, and I have sent you and Leo the application documents. The job interview is next week. This is my second and final interview. I'm really nervous and excited. And I'm also having other applications going on at the same time. My primary motivation at this stage is to change my roles. I've already been at Origins for 3 years, and my career goal is to now go towards more food development and food research. I've been long time in material research and development, but really now want to work in large scale and big industries like Valio. I'm really excited. I haven't. I have been through first interview, which was online. It was with hiring manager and one of the team member, and then I went through different assessment tests, and there was also one interview with a psychologist, like that. And after the test, and I think the results were positive. Then I have been scheduled for the second one, and this interview will be face to face next week. Yeah, so yeah.
Thank you a lot for giving a short intro into what's happening. Leo, is it okay that I share the job description first and
perfect.
ask you what would you want to pay attention in an interview?
Absolutely.
Can you all see my screen? It's funny that I removed the company name, but Mamata mentioned it, and I also noticed that I have it in the headline, but I hope it's not a problem. Okay, so this is the role. What did you notice in this role? Because people who are listening now, they are seeing it for the first time, and it's hard to, read so much text. What is important here?
I mean, I think one of the really important things to remember is that TA, like partners like myself, we're not subject matter experts in the roles that we recruit for, as in probably none of them. Like I'm recruiting for finance, I'm recruiting for marketing, that sort of stuff. I'm not an expert in any of them. And so when I get a role like this, there's a lot of terms that I understand at a really high level, but I couldn't sort of talk about. And basically that's intentional. And so I think when you're looking at a job description, what you need to make sure is that you understand what the job is talking about, because it's a fairly good indication that you're probably going to be quite a good fit for it. But when I'm writing a job description as a recruiter, a lot of this will come from the hiring manager, and I will kind of trust quite a lot that it's accurate because I can't verify it. I think if we go down though a little bit, then if you stop there, and if you can go up a little bit, the paragraph above the requirements, yeah, perfect. There are some interesting elements to this job description, which I think will absolutely be covered in the screening. For example, there are some, let's say, some previous experience requirements. There are some more soft requirements, for example, like flexibility and adaptability, that sort of thing. Obviously, the role is not permanent, which is always an interesting one when you're recruiting for this. And then if you keep going down, there's this last line on the requirements, which is fluent spoken and written Finnish and English. Now, I'm not sure what their requirements are here. Sometimes companies put Finnish on to sort of filter out applicants. Sometimes it's actually a hard requirement. Given that this is working essentially in tech, it's likely that much of the work can be done in English. But I'd say I actually don't know what the Finnish requirements like actually are for the role. I have to assume that given that Mamata has been through quite a lot of the process already, it's not a hard requirement because otherwise you would have probably been filtered out already. But it's interesting that they've mentioned it in the job description. So I don't know if you've had previous discussions with them about this.
Yes. So before applying, I had a call with the hiring manager where I had explicitly asked about this requirement. I asked her that if this is a hard requirement, I'm not going to apply. And she said it's a secondary requirement. The working language is English. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to apply. Thank you.
Amazing. No, I kind of guessed it was something like that, but given that you've been through all of the steps. Yeah.
before going to the mock session, how long will it approximately take, Leo? So everyone who is listening
I
will
mean,
know.
I think we can kind of do a short one, which is sort of maybe 10, 15 minutes, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
What I'll do is I'll sort of shorten.
මම පොඩි සෙෂන් එකකින් මම ටක් ගාලා
Please go on.
I think you'll need, yeah, basically I'll shorten the sort of version that I usually do, because also the version I usually do has quite a long time for questions about the company, and obviously I can't really, I don't want to just make stuff up, so I can't really do that bit. I'd say about sort of 10, 15 minutes. I've got some questions that I think you might encounter. There are some that are maybe more that other people may encounter in sort of TA screens, that sort of thing, and then there are some that are just fairly common in general.
I will mute myself and remove my camera so you can only talk to each other. Please then go on into the interview mock session mode.
Amazing. So, hey, Mamata, how are you doing today?
Good. How about you?
All good. All good. Do I detect some nervousness?
Yes. I'm quite a bit nervous. I thought I would prepare for this a bit in advance, but yeah, didn't have
All
time.
good. No, all good. I mean, what I can do is when I'm asking questions, I'm going to give you a bunch of context, so you'll know exactly why I'm asking the questions, and that means that you can give like a really good answer, and this should go really smoothly. Does that sound good?
Yes, let's do it. But also, I think it will
Yeah.
help me set my mind a bit in the right mode for next week. It's funny that when you have several applications going on, you have for every application you have a different. You frame your mind differently, and then you frame your words very differently, and then when you have to come back your old one, and it's like, oh yeah, what was I thinking when I wrote this application?
No, I know what you mean. No, I get it. I mean, just as a side point, I really liked your cover letter. It was really like precise. Like for this role, it was really well written. So that's fantastic. But
Thank you.
let's start. So I mean, obviously, first question I always have for anyone who really applies to a role is kind of what interested you in applying? Because you're a lead at the moment. In really interesting company, and obviously this role is a bit more junior than that. It's a senior. It's not like it doesn't have any sort of say leading experience. So kind of what interested you in the role?
My main motivation is to go back to the food industry and work to develop competences in food industry and food research skills. This is my primary motivation, and to go back to an industry where I can work at a scale. My job currently is a lead, but it's a startup. It's a startup.
Right.
Yes, it's a startup,
Yeah.
and we're working at a scale, but it's not the scale I want to work at. But also, I'm willing to go back to more streamlining my experiences in food research roles. So this job at Value is exactly what I need. Although the roles they could be flexible with both senior research scientist role or the research scientist. I definitely applied for. So when I wrote my cover letter, it was for senior research, and I believe that if this is successful, I'm gonna get the senior one. And although this is a 2 years position, it doesn't really bother me because I know there will be lots of growth opportunities at Valio. It's one of the front runners in the Finnish food innovation space, and this is where I want to be exactly at. There is a lot of opportunities for cross-functional collaborations. The job is at the R&D innovation lab. Where we will be doing what the company will be doing, the core R&D, and the work will be moving from the R&D to pilot scale and the production scale. So this is where the job is really exciting for me at this stage. And the job also describes about collaboration with other institutes, other stakeholders in the scope of Food 2.0 initiative. This is an initiative, is an extremely large one, 6 years project, which will work towards supporting the Finnish food sustainability, so self-sustaining different initiatives for the food industry. So this also is very interesting for me. I would like to contribute to the sustainability part of the in the food to advance the food systems.
I get that. No, it makes sense. No, fantastic. Thanks for the summary. So I think one of the things that we're likely going to be quite interested in, sort of this is given that it's a 2 year role. There's obviously some quite strict timelines involved. We'll probably have a lot of deadlines, a lot of milestones. I was wondering if you could tell me about an experience, like your time from your experience, where you've been involved in a project where you missed a deadline, and kind of what happened, and how did you sort of get back on track? How did you move past it?
So one of the recent experience was from my current job at Origin. It was we had to commercialize and sell. It was our second commercialization project, and for the startup, it's a really big milestone. So everybody was very involved. It was very demanding and involved. Everybody was very involved, but we did not have enough capacity to produce the material. So the customer required 5 kilos to do a small scale launch. And at that stage, we were only able to do, for example, with the current capacity, only 1 kilos. So the whole company came together, and of course, we reprioritized everything, and we all streamlined our efforts to upscale the production, but it did not happen. We couldn't reach the 5 kilo goal. So definitely we missed the deadline to supply our raw material, and was not really desired. It was not taken nicely by the customer, but we had to come all together and explain this to the customer, that this was the case, and they actually knew that they knew our situation from the beginning, so they did not take it super hard, but there was some feint in the reputation and so on. But we promised them that you are not getting these 5 kilos by X date, but you will get it by X date, and we will make sure you get it. So we promised them a new deadline, and we took that really seriously, and we made efforts that we planned it really carefully in our internal organization. So everybody really came and pushed this through, and at the end of that deadline, we supplied that material, and we were able to conduct it smoothly. So this was the case when it was important, but we just communicated very openly and honestly with the customer, because we were working at the limit of our capacity and still not able to achieve the deadline. But also the management realized that we should not make promises that we couldn't fulfill. So that was also the lesson for all of us. Yeah.
And what was your role specifically in all of this? Because obviously, as a lead, sort of fairly senior.
My role was to communicate between the customer and our process team. So I was back and forth with our process team. I had to monitor the output from the process team, and I had to keep in track how much we have, and also the quality of the raw material. So although the process team had produced quite a lot, the quality was not matching to the target requirement, and I was the one who would sort of like gatekeep those requirements.
Gotcha.
So at the end of the day, when we were approaching the deadline and not really able to keep up that volume, I red flagged that with our management team, and I said that we couldn't we were not able to do it, what we have to come up with a solution now. Like, what do we communicate to the customer? Because now at this stage, the customer communication becomes extremely important.
Yeah.
What are our strategies, right? So we
Yeah.
brainstorm a little bit, and we come up with a conclusion that we have to be very honest about it, that we can't do it. We are at the limit of our capacity. So my role was to communicate the message from the management team to the customer, and also, of course, take the feedback
Sure.
to the management.
Wow.
So do the dirty job.
Pretty intense. Pretty intense.
Yes.
Wow. No, fair enough. I mean, I think that's quite interesting. I think being able to sort of convey sort of tough messages is definitely a skill in itself, and I think it's definitely something quite useful. On the other side of that, you know, a lot of the work that you'll be doing in this role will be, really quite interesting. But it might be that you get assigned a project that is just not of interest to you. And so I guess kind of as a broader question, how do you manage a situation where you've been given work, you've been assigned work that is not interesting? Like, what's your process?
My first step is to discuss with the manager. I will evaluate how boring the job is, first of all, if there are elements that are interesting to me, because the overall scope can be boring, but then there are elements that might excite me, but also what I can really be involved in. So I would evaluate the job description, the elements to that, and then if everything is extremely from the scale of 0 to 100, if everything is like pointing towards 80 to 90, I will definitely talk to the manager and see if there are opportunities, if I can outsource that to my colleague, or if I can outsource to that colleague, or if there are some elements, if from the 0 to 100, if the scale is 50, then I will communicate that to the also to the manager, and see if there are elements I can work, and then there are some elements that I can just outsource. So these will be the steps I will take.
Fair enough. I mean, let's say, like, again, hypothetical situation. Yeah, your manager comes to you and says, "Hey, like, we need someone to run these real basic tests. Like, kind of, we need someone. I've chosen you. There's no sort of, like, there's no sort of decision. Sort of like, there's no sort of opportunity to sort of move it off. Like, this is what you're going to be doing." How do you, like, what's your process for sort of being able to make sure that you're maintaining a really sort of high standard of work, even if you're like really not interested in kind of the work that you're doing?
That has actually rarely happened, because I'm naturally very curious. It's a very hypothetical, yes, but in my past experience, it has rarely happened that I am not curious, or I'm not interested by anything new. So I will go for it. Depends if the length of the project. If it's a very short-term project that is very boring, it doesn't bother me. If it's not harming other projects, if it's not taking too much of my time from other interesting projects, that's fine. I will push through it. But if it's a really long-term boring project of 1 year, then I definitely will have a talk with my manager about it.
I get it. I get it, and like, it's not an easy question, let's say, like, but it is something that I've seen happen with, let's say, with research projects. People join, and some people get the bits that are really interesting, kind of the bits that are moving forwards, and other people kind of are given the roles that are a bit more sort of, like, say, like, sort of, process heavy, let's say. And I think it's always important to be able to kind of, be able to explain kind of why, or rather how you would handle them, because it might be, that you join, and some of the work you're doing is really cool, and some of it is just really sort of, I don't want to say mundane, but it's kind of the stuff that's required to make other stuff work. Yeah.
But sometimes mundane things, sometimes mundane things are also nice. It depends on what kind of jobs excites you. I personally prefer a balance between mundane and exciting ones. That gives me,
Fair enough.
that gives me enough time for rest and reset the brain. But yeah, I think talking to the manager and explaining why your thought process behind the why you might not be the best one to do this, if that's not in your interest area, would be the first step to do. But as I think in the research work, things can become really interesting after a mundane period of time.
Yeah, no, I get that. Fantastic.
Yes.
So basically, a couple more questions, and then I think we can kind of go to the debrief, and other people can ask. So, what would you say is one of your weaknesses?
One of my weakness I flag is setting boundaries.
Okay.
Setting boundaries at work. This has happened in the past, and I have learned my lesson. But this is work on progress. Setting boundaries. Taking one example is that when we had to do the first commercial launch again, which is the huge milestone in the startup world. Again, we were not ready for that internally or operationally. We are not ready for that. But to push through that as a lead in the application, I decided to take also the work from other colleagues, which gave me, which put me in the edge of burnout. So looking back, if I had to do it, I would definitely discuss about the timelines properly with the manager, and also flag that this is not possible to do it in X amount of time because we do not have the resources. So it is better that we postpone it by a month or two or whatever, and also to define very precise roles and responsibilities for everybody in the team, because I naturally took a lot of the load just because I was so passionate and I wanted to push it through. So I forgot my boundaries there.
Yeah, I get that.
So that would be one of my weakness, and I constantly try to reflect on it and remind that I have a limited amount of time in my day, and I want to use it very productively. But honestly, when you are very interested and curious, it is very you can naturally be taking more load than you need. So one of the development area is setting boundaries at work.
I get that. No, I absolutely understand. No, fantastic. And then the last kind of question is a bit more, let's say, a bit more admin-y. Let's say that you fly through the recruitment process, and you get to the end and we want to make an offer. What's your when would you be able to start? Because we're quite keen to move forward.
I would be able to start as early as needed, because I'm currently in the process of, we have the temporary layoff in my current organization. So there is no formal notice period.
Okay.
Zero. So it can be as early as next week or whenever you are ready.
Amazing. No, fantastic. No, that's good. So I think those are all the questions I had planned. It's definitely a shorter sort of TA screen than I usually do. It's a lot more. Usually it's a lot more sort of in depth, but obviously there's a lot of information missing. But yeah.
But I would love to get feedback now, because the questions, the first two questions you asked was I haven't encountered previously in the recruitment process. But also, most of my previous job have been in the academia, where we do not go through this HR process. It's just straight to talking to the professor and talking about very core things, and like, okay, you have the skills, you can start next week, something like that.
No, exactly.
But also, in the last job at Origin, it was startup, so we did not also have a very extensive recruitment process. So I do not have experience answering those very maybe necessary and generic questions. So I would love to get feedback.
No, I get it. Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think as well with that company, like they are a lot more sort of corporate, but they are still very much in the private sector. So they have quite a formal process. There's information that they will need to get for from every candidate, and there will be some things I think they just kind of want to check. Like they like clearly you've been through the process, and you've if they're inviting you for a final interview, it's because they're happy with your assessments. Like they wouldn't
Mhm.
invite you for a final interview if they weren't
And I
happy with
have to
what
say
you've.
that I have not, sorry, I forgot to also tell to Lydia maybe that I have not talked to the HR yet. So
Sure.
the final interview will be with the HR. There will be three people
Yeah.
present: HR, the hiring manager,
Ooh,
whom I
cool.
have met before, and I think the boss of the hiring manager, who is also very much technical
Yeah,
person.
I get that. So I think that interview will likely be partly super admin stuff like salary request, notice period, um, all that, all that sort of that stuff. And I think that given that the hiring manager's boss will be there, they might be asking you things like, again, kind of, I think trying to dive a bit more into your personality. Like, for example, how do you handle sort of like, deadlines being missed, that sort of thing? Because that's what they're likely to be interested in. Obviously, I don't know for sure. Um, but let's dive into some of the questions, and this won't be in the order that I asked them. But so one of the things I asked you was about, like I say, essentially a time that you've been part of a project where there was a delay. The
Mm,
reason that they might ask this essentially is that, as I said, like you've got a two year like contract, there will be some
yeah,
quite hard deadlines. And I think what they want to see is specifically how you handle that. And that's why I had the follow-up one. Because you told me all about it, but you kept saying we did this, the company did this,
yeah,
and I mean, just super frankly, for a TA, that's irrelevant. We is,
who are
in
we?
a way, I don't care. I want to know what you've done. And so I was like, kind of, what's your role? And then actually, when
Yeah.
you gave an answer, it was really, really good because it turns out you'd actually been really key in all of this. You were one of the people who's actually dealing with quite difficult messaging, and actually raising, it's like flagging concerns with management, which is really important stuff. And I think with that, like, I think you can probably be more confident, and be like, if someone's asking about a time that you did this, I think you really need to give an example of kind of what you have actually done. And yes, you can say, the team did this, but I think the interest is how you managed it, kind of,
Mm,
and in a way, like everyone's going to miss a deadline at some point.
yeah.
What we want to see is that if you do it, it's not the end of the world. Then with the question about what's your weakness, so this was a really interesting answer because what we're actually interested in when we ask this, so I don't ask this question, but a lot of people do. What we're actually interested in is sort of what you've actually learned from it. And you touched on this right at the end of the question, right at the end. And so it's a really weird question because you want to find a weakness about yourself, but you don't want something that's too small and you don't want something that's too big, right? So it's a really difficult balance, and it's quite a personal question as well because you're having to kind
Mm,
of go deep into your own psyche. Um, but I think that the key bit of this is what you learned.
yeah.
Like how you can apply it. It's the same way that if someone says like, "How do you deal with stress?" or like, "Tell me about a situation where you were stressed," they don't, to a certain extent, care about what was stressing you out. What they want to know is that you've got a method that you're not going to sort of collapse immediately. Just going through
So how would
what
you
we asked.
answer? Because I have been asked also this question, I think by the psychologist or something, that
Hmm.
how do you handle stress and anxiety at work? And that was really, oh yeah,
Yeah.
let me think. So how would you actually answer this? What would
I mean,
your answer
so yeah,
be?
so yeah, no, so part of it depends on who you're talking to. Let's say I had a job, well, let's say a process where I had to talk with a psychologist and they asked me this and I made a joke about it. And they sat back and wrote something down, and I'm like, that might have been the wrong move. Um, but I mean, again, I think in a way, acknowledging that stress happens, because I've had some people who say, "Oh, I don't get stressed,"
Oh,
and
that's
my
that's
first thought is, well, I'm like, yeah, my first thought is like, well, okay, we can't move forwards then, because you do get stressed, and it's going to happen, and if you haven't really thought about this, you're going to fall apart pretty quickly. So I think the first part is to acknowledge that it happens, and the second part is to then be able to say, hey, like this is how I do it. This method works for me. And you don't have to go super deeply into it, but what they want to see is that you have a method for doing it. And so some people might say, well, actually, the way I get stressed, what I do is I write everything down and I break it into little smaller pieces, and that's kind of how I can move through.
mm,
Some people
mm.
will say, actually, the way I've done it in the past is I'll go to the team and ask them if they've had similar situations and kind of draw in more experience that way. And so I think again, it's about giving a really like just giving an explanation that makes sense. In the same way with the question about kind of essentially what do you do if the work is boring, your initial answer tried to kind of get around it. Like you were sort of saying, oh, well, I'd ask if I could not do it. And actually, in a way, it's valid. But when we're asking it, what we want to see is kind of like, let's say you're on the project, right? And they say, hey, like for a year, we need you just doing like tests, the same thing over and over again with each sample just to make sure. And it's really sort of manual work, but like what they want to see is that like you're going to A, be okay with that, and B, that you have a way of managing this. And I think that your initial answer was very much like, well, I just find a way not to do it, which
Mm.
might be possible, but what if it's not? You know,
Yeah.
you're going to be in your 2-year contract. And with a 2-year contract, again, I'm not deeply into HR, but as I understand it, if you were to leave that early, you may need to pay back the money to the company for
Mm.
the rest of the value of the contract. So
Yeah.
they're not always easy just to sort of quit and get out of. Now, obviously, there's discussions, but
So this
what
question was
I
really
think kind of what,
interesting in a way that,
yeah,
you don't really, yeah, I think the question was me trying to figure out what do you actually want to know, because I never
yeah.
say no to any boring jobs, but but then what do you want to know from what so
Well,
yeah,
I challenge you a bit there, actually. I challenge you a bit
yeah,
because because what you actually said was I'd go and talk to my manager and see if someone else can do it. And while that might not be what you meant to a
no,
recruiter,
I
that
mean
is you
I would
saying no.
never do that.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. And I think kind of what like let's say I've been asked this before, and the way that I do it when I get stuff that is just boring like data entry, the way that I do is I try to see how it fits into the bigger picture because that's what actually motivates me. And so it might be that, hey, I need to fill out all of these forms, right? But if I know that like once they're filled out, this new like piece of tech or this new service is actually going to work, that for me is really motivating because I can kind of see my piece in it. It might be that you kind of go, well, actually, it's only for kind of as you say, it's only for X amount of time. I can do that, and I sort of know if there's an end date to it, then
Mm,
that's fine because I know that something different is coming. But again, what they want to see is that it doesn't matter what work they assign you, you're going to be able to produce results. And in the private sector, which is what this company is, th that's what's happening. Like my partner
yeah,
is doing a PhD at the moment, and she gets really frustrated that there's no business case. It's just sort of produce this document
yeah,
and as long as you produce the document, where in the private sector, it's like, hey, here's some KPIs you've got to meet. There's some results. There's quality levels that you've got to. And so what they want to make sure is that, especially if you're coming from academia, there might be this assumption that actually you're not, like you're not super familiar with how results work. And clearly that's not the case because you actually have, startup experience. But
mm,
what they want to see is that, yeah, essentially, can they give you different things in this, and sort of be confident that you're able to. And I say this might not come up, but I think if it does, it's going to be a really key question. Because I mean, also like it could be that they have a really sort of detailed plan of what everyone's going to be doing. It could be that they are looking at a group of people to join in some sort of formulation, and they're looking at kind of like if someone says, actually, I don't really care about the work. I'm more interested in working at the company. Like that's been my dream.
Mm.
In a way, it's kind of easier to put them into it. Whereas if someone's like, well, it depends on how interesting I find the work, I might just ask, might just ask my manager if someone else can do it. Then they're going to be looking at your experience and saying, well, okay, is this actually more relevant than, you know? And so again, in a way, if someone's asking you about how would you do in this situation, it's not about saying, oh, I'd find a way not to do it. You need to be able to
Yeah.
answer how you would do it. And they're not easy. Like these are not easy questions. Like
Yes.
yeah, they're tough.
Because like you said, the work is in the research group, and there might be research
Mm,
projects which might be completely out of my expertise, and
yeah,
which I might not find it. But then, in reality, I'm not gonna say no, because
yeah.
you do it.
No, yeah,
But then I
totally.
think
Yeah,
the essence was like, what do you want to actually know from this? And so I think the
yeah,
difference between like what do you want to know and actually my my
yeah.
personality is, yeah, it was a bit there, but
No,
good
and
to know that this is the message that they want to know, and there might be questions like that. So yeah, I mean, I have
I
done a lot
mean,
of
as
those
I said,
work sometimes, like just entry things in the
yeah,
laptop for hours and hours, but we do it.
yeah. I mean, as I said, like a good rule of thumb is that if you're being asked about sort of how would you handle this experience, that's what they want to know, not how do you get out of it. Like how would you,
Yeah.
like sort of don't try to sort of dodge the question. But these are
Mm.
not easy. Like I'm not trying to sort of be like, oh, it's so easy. No, these are tough questions, but
Yeah.
they do come up.
Do you have also a list of other questions? We don't have to discuss, but just a list.
I mean, for example, in my own work, one of the questions I do ask most candidates is like, how do you feel about working in the defense industry? Like, how do you feel about the work that you're doing potentially being used for missile targeting, for example? Because it's a like, and it might be, say, for example, someone was applying to this role who's never works in a startup, who's only ever worked in academia. One of the questions I might be asked is like, well, how do you feel about your research being used for profit, where you don't
Mm.
necessarily know where that goes, and there's no specific answer, but what we want to see is that you thought about it,
Mm.
because if like, for example, in my experience, if I say, hey, how do you feel about working in defense, and they're like, oh, it's fine, and I'm like, well, okay, what happens if like we have a customer, let's say, who's let's say a bit more controversial, like what happens then? Whereas if someone's like, actually, I've thought about this a lot, here's kind of my thought process, I'm like, okay, great, like that's not a worry for us.
Mm.
Um, so like the salary request question is really quite common as well. It's to my mind, it should always be done in like the first interview, because it cuts out a lot of stress later on.
Mm.
But I didn't ask you because firstly, I mean, I didn't know if you're comfortable talking about it sort of in front of a group of strangers. But
Yeah.
B, I also don't know if you've already sort of discussed it or anything like that.
No, we haven't discussed. There was in the form, the application form, there was a place to state my salary expectation, and I did
Yeah,
mention it there, but we haven't discussed
cool.
afterwards.
Fair enough. No, so like, yeah, no, there's a whole strategy around that you can kind of go into, but it's, yeah, all good.